This is the Skeptical Student Show, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
You can always listen to the episode on Fast Forward and follow the podcast to never miss new episodes.
Hey everyone, I'm Gavish and I welcome you back to yet another episode of the Skeptical Student Show. In this episode, we will be talking about one of the stakeholders of student life, the parents. And yes, I said we because I have a jubilant guest with me to converse today on the topic parents, comparison, and unreal expectations. Allow me to introduce you to Pragya Sharma, a student at Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi, pursuing BA English Honours. She is a cheerful person, a talented person, and is more than deserving to be here today. Welcome, Pragya.
Hi, Gavish. It's really nice to be here. I really admire your work and it's really an honor to be here. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun discussions today.
Yeah, I look forward to that too.
Blast from the past segment.
In this segment, we talk about our own experiences pertaining to the topic at hand. So, Pragya, I would like to take up this opportunity to ask you about how your experience has been with your parents. Has there been any comparisons or expectations from your parents' side?
Well, to be honest, Gavish, I did not have a lot of comparisons with other students per se because I have been a very studious child and I have always, done well in my studies. I have also been very interested in my studies. So, not a lot of comparisons, but expectations, yes. Since I expressed my desire to be a humanities student, my family literally thought it, as a direct giveaway to becoming an IS. So now everybody in my family has this expectation that I do not have any other aim in life other than becoming an IS. And I have never even been asked of my opinion that what I want to be. So I think that is one unreal expectation that they have. This is also something that, every humanities child faces, I think. Ki now you have taken humanities, what other career choice do you have? I do not think this should be an expectation. Becoming an IS is of course a very honorable job, but this is a very unrealistic, or should I say a very high expectation for someone who has just joined college, thrust into the world. And I think parents and family should give the child, the student, a little time to figure out what they want to do with their lives.
Thank you so much for sharing with us that. And I think I can completely relate to that, as in, I am also the studious one. And especially, I can relate to the humanities portion as well. And those who have listened to my humanities episode obviously know about what troubles I had. Also, if not IAS, I'm damn sure you'll end up doing something big in life. Now, coming to my experience, I think if I were to talk about myself, there has always been a situation wherein I have been on the other side of the glass because I tended to do well in academics. And it was always like the parents around me, be it the relatives or the neighbors, were always comparing their kids with me. Not to say that I enjoyed that, I obviously did not, but I did need to remind them time and again. And I have spoken against this. I remember this particular incident wherein some auntie had come over with a newspaper in her hand which had my photo in it. She had come to our house to congratulate me on my board result and she tended to express dissatisfaction with her own child. And that is when I remember telling her that how about you try and discover what your child is good at, because every child is built differently and he must have some skill of his own which you must encourage him to discover. Also, my mother used to compare me and my brother, but with time she has learned that it is actually of no use. Other than that, there has not really been any controlling or expectations. Perhaps I have exceeded their expectations in some way or the other.
That is awesome, dude. Exceeding expectations.
Problem pinpoint segment.
Moving on from experiences to problems, which brings me to my first question. Why do you think Indian parents tend to compare their kids with other children?
I think the major reason is what I have understood from my observing my own parents and parents of my friends is that I think they see it as a kind of a push or maybe an encouragement that, your friend is doing so much, why can't you do it? And if I can do it, why can't you do it? Or if, see, your best friend is scoring. I'll tell you a very personal example. One of my best friends, she was not very good at social studies in class 10th when we had it, and her mother was always comparing her to me because I was good at social studies. On the contrary, she was very good at science and maths, and I was literally barely passing science and maths. And I think that is a very horrible thing. It always hurt her that, her mother never showed appreciation for her capabilities and always pointed out her flaws. So you shouldn't do that. Of course, try and encourage your child, but in a way that does not demotivate them. So it is seen as an encouragement, but actually it is not.
I agree to that. And this is also in some way or the other similar to my own experience where that auntie was supposedly dissatisfied with her own child. I think it is high time that we should learn that everyone has their own skills and capabilities. And also, I think that comparison comes into play when parents are actually seeing other kids do stuff around them. When they see, they tend to compare. And a question must arise in their mind that why not my child? I think this is the basis from which comparison sprouts. Moving on to the next question, it is this comparison only, in fact, which gives birth to expectations. Why do you think Indian parents hold on to unreal expectations from their children?
I think with the advent of social media reality shows, this is something that is really I've been observing in my own household. I think this is what, they showcase children with unreal capabilities, excellent dancers, singers, children who have a lot of knowledge, winning prizes, winning quizzes. And I think parents always want their kid to shine in that kind of spotlight. But what I think they don't remember is that that particular kid, that one talented kid who we are watching on TV would not have been there if their parents would not have supported them in their own talent. I mean, if you want your child to be a dancer and your child does not, then what is the point really of expecting anything? So I think what comes around here is that unreal expectations are just basically a burden on children. And have expectations which at least your child wants to do. You want your child to work hard, but which direction are you pushing him in? I think that is the real point here.
Great points, great points. I agree with that. And also, I think this belief of holding on to these expectations also is derived from the fear of unknown. Parents are more comfortable with knowing and with practicing what they're familiar with. And hence, there is always an apprehension, a fear of letting your child explore or venture into something which is unknown to them. I think this is what they are afraid the most of. Which brings me to my next question. We have known for the fact that the resultant expectations further give birth to the need to be in charge. Why do you think parents have a tendency to control their children, control each and every move of their lives, from telling them which career option to pick to when to get married? What do you think about it?
I think telling this from my own experience, my father always has said this thing to me that I want you to learn from my mistakes. I do not want you to repeat the same mistakes I did. Of course, every parent wants that. No parent wants their child to repeat their mistakes. But I think what parents need to know in this is that let your child make their own mistakes. How will they know what to do and not to do? I think the reason that such control is there, I think it comes from a place of love, from a place of affection, but the form it takes in the form of invasion of privacy sometimes, I think that really hurts the child. I mean, you need to give the child their space. You need to give us as students, as people who are just going out into the world, you need to give them space to learn their own things, to manifest their own dreams. I think that is how success comes along by failure. So I think that is really needed. Parents need to rethink the whole controlling and guiding children in a different way.
Yeah, that is a great advice indeed from your father. And another point being, I think there is a tendency in parents to control the lives of their children, again, in the pursuit of security, because they really do not want to take any risks. For example, a child goes up to his parent and says that I want to be a cricketer. Now, this is something the parent will view as a risk because they have, all their lives growing up in the generation generation of 70s, 80s, and 90s, they have seen all their lives that engineer, a government job, or perhaps being a doctor are seen as more sought after or secure professions. That is what compels them to tell their kids what to do. And coming to the points which you had made, I think learning from your parents' mistake is impressive, but would you not agree that making mistakes just so you can learn from them is also a necessary process? I think you would agree to that.
Completely agree to that. We all learn from our own mistakes. I mean, as small mistakes as, making spelling mistakes. If you have not made any spelling mistakes, how would you learn what is the correct spelling? I mean, something as small as that, or something monumental as making a huge mistake in your career tells you what not to do in your life. So I think, of course, it is very necessary to make mistakes.
Exactly. We have been talking about expectations, control, and whatnot, but have you ever wondered why do we need to obey? Because of the age factor, or why is there a need to not question your parents? Is it not true that in our practice of placing our parents at some sort of pedestal, we often tend to forget that they are also human beings and human beings are bound to make mistakes? What do you think about that?
This is something I've battled with literally my whole life. There have been, not to name anybody, but many people older than me that I did not think were very, good to me. But well, still, I had to respect them, greet them respectfully, talk to them, never question them.
Yeah, we all have been there.
Yeah. Coming to the point of parents, I think I completely agree with you that never should we place our parents on a pedestal. Yes, you should listen to them because they are talking from experience, but also question your parents. Always question your parents. Why to do this? Why to do that? I mean, when they are, giving you advice for your life, when they are advising you on your career, you have a right to question them. And I mean, if your parents love you and you have, I think one more thing that comes around here is all about your relationship with your parents. I think that is a very important point. You should always have a very nurturing, a very creative sort of relationship with your parents, so that, when you are questioning them, it does not have to be that you are questioning their entire existence or their entire basis of advising you, but it should be in a way that how is this benefiting me? Not in an offensive way, but in a constructive way. I think that is very important. Questioning your parents as to how is your advice helping me or how is it not helping me.
I agree, and I also would stand by the fact that everything should be taken with a pinch of salt. This will, not only help you with your relation with your parents, but also in the outside world. So, coming to our last problem, in the end, talking about negative impact on human resource, I think it all boils down to the fact that we ourselves are tearing apart the very fabric of our society, or even the fabric of our country by extension. Because when children are disturbed and unhappy, they definitely are deprived of what they could have been or how they could have contributed. So, what do you have to say about that?
I completely agree with this, Gavish. We live in a very uncertain, a very dangerous time right now in the midst of a pandemic. And this has taken a toll on all of our mental health. And I think that is very, very important to have a very sound mental health. And such unrealistic expectations or burdens from parents, especially, also do tend to take a toll on that. And I think this is something that should be inculcated in every child to be strong mentally, to face their battles rather than shy away from them, and also have a partnership with their parents such that they can share their feelings with them if their expectations or their advices take a toll on them. And you see so many children, it's so disheartening, so many children just ending their lives because their mental pressure of studies or anything is just too much for them. And I think this is so disappointing that children are not even able to find a platform to express what they are feeling. And I think this is really a failure on everyone's behalf, on the parents' behalf, that they could not create an environment safe enough for the child to express, and also for the child, he could not face his parents or his family. I think it's just so disheartening.
Points well made. This brings us to
Response segment.
in which I had asked the question: is hitting your child as a parent justified? Why or why not? So, we'll first hear from you and then go on to reflect upon the response which has been received.
I think absolutely not. Hitting a child is never justified. Violence in any way from a parent to a child is never justified, be it physical violence, be it mental violence. I think hate, anger, frustration, all these negative emotions, especially in a parent and child relationship, is never fruitful. It's always futile. The parents might see it as a learning experience, but the child, there's just spite growing inside of him at that point of time when you're hitting the child. And that is never fruitful. Instead, sit down with your child. Tell him what he did wrong and why was it wrong and why should he never do it again. Relate everything that your child does to why is it not good or why is it good for him, not about you. Make it about the child if he has made a mistake. But hitting is never justified.
Exactly, and it has been justified since olden times as a way,
As a way of discipline.
hitting children with belts and chappals and whatnot, especially in the Indian context. I don't know how, but things are changing slowly and steadily, as in people are waking up to the reality that hitting should not be justified. And also reflecting back to one of the questions we had discussed upon before, I think age is just a number and cannot be
Exactly.
really related to maturity. Now, we'll take a moment to reflect upon the response, which has summed up everything which could have been summed up or which I could have wanted to talk about. So, I really loved reading this, and I think our listeners will too. This is by a person called Rutkar Kaul. So, it goes like, I don't think hitting your child, even if you are a parent, is justified because that has a deep impact on a child's psychology as it just breaks the confidence of the child and he or she can't gather courage of sharing anything with their parent thinking that they would consider it as his fault and would beat him again. Also, it limits the child's all-round personality growth, which is very precious in current scenario because current time is all about personality development. I loved reading this. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think really summed up what we were both trying to convey, that it really takes a toll when any kind of violence takes place in a household.
Exactly. And children, especially the younger ones, view their parents as some sort of super entity or even as gods in their own way. And your superhero beating you or practicing violence.
Exactly. And parents are, your first role model. What you see your parents doing is what you think is correct when you move on into the world. And I think this kind of mentality, beating your children, is just wrong. It's just completely wrong.
Seeking Solution segment.
Shifting the point of focus from problems to solutions. So, what do you think can be the prominent solutions to all these problems we had just discussed about?
I think the first and foremost solution is work on your relationship with your parents. And if a parent is listening this, work on your relationship with your child. I'll tell from my experience, I have a very emotional, a very strong connect with my parents. Of course, it's not possible for a child to share everything that happens in their lives with their parents. That is, of course, not possible. You have your friends to share some things, but when something takes a toll on you, as we were talking about mental health before, your parents in your house, there should be such an environment that you can share what you feel. If something is troubling you, your relationship with your parents should be such that you can tell them and they hear it without judging you. What is really important here is, I think, vulnerability. Your parents also should be vulnerable in front of you. They shouldn't be gods who have no emotions. Parents, let out your emotions in front of your child. Children, let out your emotions. I think that is the first step to all of this.
Absolutely. And there is a need to be honest with one another. I think this only strengthens the foundations of your relationship, of the foundations of the child parent relationship, rather, and keeping in space for discussing vulnerabilities. For example, I can see myself discussing possibly anything in the world with my mother. So that is how strong the foundation of our relationship has been. Obviously, it may not be the same for everyone, but have you ever heard of the saying that children from these stricter households tend to do worse things?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I mean, it just comes down to childhood trauma. Don't you think all these, Hitler had childhood trauma and everybody knows how that turned out to be. So please don't give. So everybody just mend your relationship with your parents. It's not as easy as it sounds. But I think the first thing that is required is just letting out your emotions. both sides, not just one side, not only the children but also the parents. I think that is very important, letting out your emotions, whatever you feel.
Of course, and that calls for verbalizing. In fact, if you have a problem, instead of keeping it in, letting it corrode or, drown you from inside, you should start verbalizing it with your parent. For example, if you have a problem with your parent comparing you, just stand up to them. Tell them that, yes, I have a problem when you compare me with someone. 80% of the times, the parent will realize his or her mistake and will stop comparing. So, that is how the art of verbalizing the problems can be put to use.
Give children space, and children should also give their parents space. And I think that demarcation where your life starts and your parents' involvement in their end should be clear to both. And same compared to, children being with their parents. So I think both need their own space and both need to be together.
Absolutely. Without making the picture look all flowery and glittery, I would also recommend for you to move out for your own personal growth. You should know when to stop hitting the nail or when to stop trying. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with this. When you move out, you find your own space, you become independent, you learn to do a lot of things. So I think that is very important. Yes.
Exactly. And I think you should try and convince your parents about how you would want to be with them or what would you want to do in life and all the stuff along those lines, but you should also know when to stop trying. Also, as Pragya clearly mentioned, that parents and children should have their space. Children should also know what not to expect from their parents. Unrealistic expectations from the children's end is also harmful. For example, we are still living in India, and you can't expect every Indian parent to casually discuss about dating advice, right?
Yes, but I think that everybody should not dating advice exactly, but yes, having a free environment is required. Now, what that free environment amounts to depends and differs from household to household.
Yeah, that's subjective. Something which I have personally seen around me as there is a lot of blind example following. For example,
Yes.
people have seen or parents see other children doing good in life, making a career for themselves in a predefined path. So they would also expect their children to follow the same path. But things just don't work that way. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I completely agree with that. I think of course, there are a lot of successful doctors, engineers, IS officers, and they have worked very hard for it. But you also need to see what your own child wants to do, what I, as a student, want to do. My parents should appreciate that and should support me with that, be it almost anything. But also, you also need to prove to your parent when you want to do something that is not conventional. You need to show them that you really, really want to do it. You need to show your hard work. You need to prove it to them because, of course, it's not very easy as a parent to send your child out into the unknown. So I think both sides need to take care of this.
Exactly. And it only goes on to point to the fact that everyone has a different trajectory of their life.
Moral of the episode.
So, Pragya, what would be your last words, or in your opinion, the moral of this episode?
In a nutshell, I think what is really the question here is how good a relationship a child and a parent have with each other. And I think everybody needs to work on that, be it in any sphere. You need to start vocalizing your own opinions. You need to listen to your parents' opinions, but also question them as to why is it good for me. Children need to work hard to show their parents that yes, this is what I want to do. And I think that sums it up.
Yes, yes. And would you not support the introduction of subjects like parenting or, how to be a good parent in schools?
Absolutely.
Or what if we are taught things like this from the very beginning?
Yes, absolutely. I think mental health camps or parenting camps, parent child bonding camps, these things should be a common sight in schools or in any educational institute, private camps, such things like that. Because I think this is really important.
Exactly. I think this is what real education will count for.
Yes.
Great.
Supplementary segment.
This brings us to our next segment. And for Pragya and those who do not know, in the supplementary segment of our show, we give something back to our listeners. something which can be of value. And this time, I would suggest you to watch a YouTube video called What Do Indian Parents Think by Fable, a channel on YouTube. It is a quite wholesome video wherein a group of parents share their beliefs by agreeing or disagreeing to various statements. It will be interesting to watch, so don't forget to check it out. The link will be made available in the episode description. That brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much, Pragya, for taking out time and agreeing to do this. It was a pleasure to have you, and I hope it was a pleasure for our listeners to hear to you
No,
as
it
well.
was my pleasure entirely, Gavish, to converse on such a relatable topic for, I think, every Indian child. So, really, it was great to be in this podcast.
Thank you so much. And before leaving, we leave you all with our social media handles for you to stay connected just in case. So I am called Gavish Raptor with GAVISH_RAPTOR on Instagram. Pragya, what about you?
My Instagram handle is at the rate PRAGY dot 4A's. A. Pragya.
Impressive. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. And don't forget to tune in next week for a fresh episode.
You were listening to the Skeptical Student Show by Gavish Raptor, created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
You know, man.